Yeah, so it's chapter 4, this is the curse of Canaan. So we'll just read a little bit about the story, and then we could discuss some more. Who wants to do some reading? This 18 to 27.
The sons of Noah who emerged from the ark were Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Ham was the father of Canaan. These three were Noah's sons, and from them the whole world was repopulated. Noah began to be a man of the soil, and he planted a vineyard. He drank some of the wine, making himself drunk, and uncovered himself in the tent. Ham, the father of Canaan, saw his father naked, and he told it to his two brothers outside. Shem and Japheth took a cloak and placed it on both their shoulders. Walking backwards, they then covered their father's nakedness. They faced away from him and did not see their father naked. Noah awoke from his wine-induced sleep, and he realized what his youngest son had done to him. He said, "Cursed is Canaan. He shall be a slave to his brothers." He then said, "Blessed be God, the Lord of Shem. Canaan shall be his slave. May God expand Japheth, but may he dwell in the tents of Shem. Let Canaan be their slave."
Right, so that's the psukim in Bereshis, chapter 9, verses 18 to 29. So basically, it's as Cindy just read, that basically that Noah took his family and they survived the flood on the ark, and they went ahead to repopulate the world. So in fact, it's interesting to note there are only two. We have many tzaddikim in Jewish history and in Jewish life, many righteous people, but only two people got called tzaddik. One in the Torah, one elsewhere. One was Noach ish tzaddik. Who's the other biblical character who's known as tzaddik?
Joseph.
Correct, Yosef. So Yosef and Noach, and in fact I know someone, Noach Yosef. I told him that's why he was named after it. I gave him the reason why his name. But so what did Noach and Yosef have in common? Why are they both called tzaddik? So because they both saved the world. Noach, the flood. If not for Noach repopulating, there'd be nothing left. And Yosef with the famine, the 7 years, and then the 7 years of famine. If it didn't save the food, there wouldn't be any people left. So Noach and Yosef have in common that they saved the world. How do we know that if you save the world, you get the status of being called a tzaddik? Where's the source of that? I'll give you a hint. We say it in davening 3 times a day. It's in the Ashrei. It's probably the most famous verse, and Sephardi have a custom of doing it before Hamotzi. They say this phrase, Poseach es yodecha umaspia l'chol chai ratzon. Poseach, God, you open up your hands, umaspia l'chol ratzon, and you satisfy everyone, you sustain the whole world. And what's the next verse? Tzaddik Hashem b'chol, the God, you're a tzaddik. So we see from here, one who sustains the world, one who takes care of the world, they get the status. So Yosef and Noach, again, there are many tzaddikim in the more generic sense, but in terms of the two that somehow got the title of tzaddik, Yosef had tzaddik, Noach had tzaddik, it's the common denominator is that they both had the ability. Not everyone has the opportunity to save the world. I guess it's a pro and con. Well, lucky we don't have the opportunity, but if we had the opportunity, we should do it. But Noach and Yosef were in situations where they saw that Noach saw the world before. Just like they say, that's obviously not the same, but pre-Holocaust, post-Holocaust, as they call it, Becharbana, they saw the Jewish people being destroyed. The people lived before and after. But that's why Yosef and Noach have the status of tzaddik, because they sustained the world. So what did Noach do after? What did Noach do? Right? What was one of the first things he did after he came out of the ark? So it says Noach began to be a man of the soil, and he planted a vineyard. So interesting. There's some different midrashim that say It wasn't until Noach that they didn't have like fingers. Hands used to be this fist. There was no need. When Noach now had to work the land and post the flood, because that before there was the Garden of Eden, they didn't have to work it the same way. So the interesting medrash that says Noach was the first one, and to grow the fingers, because he's now going to be a man of soil. And it says that he planted a vineyard. So one of the first things he did is he planted a vineyard, and we saw he had a little bit to drink. So interesting. Another interesting medrash Tanchuma. The medrash says that when Noach planted the vineyard, the angel came down to him and said, "Let's make a pact. Let's make a treaty." And they slaughtered 4 animals. They slaughtered a lamb, a lion, a monkey, and a pig. Why those 4 animals? They weren't even kosher. Why those 4 animals? So the rabbis teach us that when one, and we know from real life, hopefully from observing others, not from our own, but a person, you drink a little too much, you become as sleepy as a lamb. You drink a little more to the excess, you become as fearless as a lion. You drink a little more to the excess, you start acting like a monkey, jumping around, other things, and ultimately you drink totally to the excess, you start acting like a pig, cursing, vomiting, throwing up, the works. We don't have to go into the graphic details. We see it. So we see our rabbis were well aware of the dangers of wine. Well before the zero tolerance on drunk drivers, Chazal saw before the dangers of wine, and they warned against excessive drinking. But of course the key word is excessive drinking, because since Judaism doesn't, because excessive drinking could lead to X, Y, and Z, therefore we're going to ban drinking. That's not the way it works. That you have to learn to drink in moderation. And that's why, if you notice, that every simcha, every bris, every wedding, every Friday night dinner, every yontif, how do we begin a meal? Over a cup of wine. Because in Judaism, there's the holy and the not yet holy. It's basically any act done in the right scenario could be a beautiful act. And in the different scenario, rape is a terrible thing. Living with your wife is a big mitzvah. You can go through any mitzvah in the book, any type of act, depending when you do it and where, whether it makes sense or not. So that's what our rabbis are teaching us. At every simcha, every event, we first do it over a cup of wine, because our job is to makadesh techol, is to take the mundane and make it holy. Everything's holy and not yet holy. It's what we do with it that makes the difference. And that's what they teach us here with the medrash about with Noach and the vineyard. In fact, interesting, there's a very prevalent custom among all Jews that says that people have a custom. What do they say before they drink wine or schnapps? What do people say?
L'chaim.
Correct, l'chaim. So what does that mean? I mean, l'chaim means to life. But what's it all about saying l'chaim? Where did the concept of saying l'chaim come from? So actually it says Rabbi Akiva, it's in the Gemara in Shabbos, that it says when Rabbi Akiva was making a party for his son, either a bar mitzvah, wedding, so he had a drink, and he used to have a drink. So I just share different schools of thoughts. What's behind the custom of l'chaim? Where does it come from? It means to life, but why am I saying? Very good. We always want to have to life, but why specifically? In fact, among Sfardim, they have a custom on Shabbos. Before they say the Boer Pri Hagafen, they scream out l'chaim. If you're in this, if you pay attention to. So what's this l'chaim all about? So the different schools of thought. One is, you've probably seen in the movies or on TV or other places, maybe in a bar, I don't know, people drinking. So what's the custom? People take the glasses, they want to make a toast, so they take the glasses and they bang glasses among, whether it's 2, 3, 4, what's that all, where did that come from, banging glasses right before you make a toast? So this isn't necessarily a Jewish thing, but what I've read in different places, because the concern was someone might be poisoning you. Your enemy might be putting something into your drink. I guess I guess it can't hurt you in the bar today as well. But people, and therefore when you hit the glass, some of your whatever is in it goes into that glass and to show. So basically the custom of saying l'chaim, we're bringing this l'chaim, this is for life. It shouldn't be poison in my drink. This shouldn't be for the contrary. That's how some bring down. Others bring down another source. There's a Jewish tradition not to have meat and fish. Well, it's not a tradition. Having meat and milk together, that's already in the Bible. Not to cook meat and milk together, etc. Not to cook it, not to eat it, and not to get benefit from it. But not so well known as a tradition brought down not to have fish and meat together. Not that I don't think science feels this way, but based on Jewish tradition, we don't have fish and meat together because it's supposed to be dangerous. You can have them one after another. That's why people have the fish, they take away the plates, they bring out the meat, or whatever different customs are. But the custom is we don't have fish and meat together. You can have them one after another, but not at the same time. And apparently, at least it was. Some people claim it was a danger. Today it isn't. But the prevalent custom today is not to have fish and meat together. So let's say you had fish and then you want to have meat. So you have to, basically they tell you have a little cracker, and instead of just having water, you want something stronger, like a schnapps or something to wipe out, to have a separation between the fish and the meat. So since you're having the drink of schnapps or wine, whatever you're drinking, in between the fish and meat, so basically you're saying l'chaim. This drink should be l'chaim, not like having fish and meat together, which would put me in danger. I'm separating the fish and meat, and that's where the custom of saying l'chaim came from. That's the second school of thought. A third school of thought says that it comes actually from Adam Harishon, that from the beginning, from Adam, that he ate from the Eitz Hadas, he ate from the tree of knowledge, and we have different traditions in Judaism what the tree was. The apple is not our tradition. Other religions have the apple. The apple isn't a Jewish tradition. A different opinion is not one, but one of them is it was grapes, or others say it was wheat. So either schnapps or wine come from. So basically, that's why the custom when the Svardim, when on Shabbos you make kiddush, they scream out l'chaim, because now we're showing that Adam ate from because of the sin of Adam and Eve, the human beings are whatever it means exactly, they were going to live forever. And now because of the sin, so now we're all destined to die. That's the human condition. So to speak, we say l'chaim on Shabbos when we make kiddush to say, no, this drink of wine will be l'chaim for life, and not like Adam and Eve that ate from the Eitz Hadas and they were punished with death. That's the third school of thought. We have two more. A fourth school of thought is there's a Gemara in Sanhedrin that it's someone who is liable to the death penalty, capital punishment. They were taking him out to be killed. So one of the things that Talmud says you do is, there's a lot of mental anguish going on if a person knows, if you're really crazy and nuts, who knows. But a normal person, under a lot less stressful, you're going to stress. Certainly, if you know you're going to be killed here and put to death, it's going to be very stressful. In fact, I remember when I went to San Francisco and I visited Alcatraz. That's that prison or former prison, and so now they have. I guess now they probably give out iPads. When I was there, I think it was like Walkmans and tape recorders. And you walk around they lock you in the jail, they have their whole shtick they do. So I remember them, this is one of the things that stuck with me. I mean, there are many other things that they were saying, but they were interviewing some of the prisoners, and they're asking, because Alcatraz is known as the very tough prison, they didn't treat the prisoners, I guess that's why they closed it down, ultimately. They said, so what was the worst part of Alcatraz? So you figure you'd say, I used to get beat up by the guards every night, they starved me, etc. You know what the worst part of it? He said, on a nice sunny day, a nice clear day, you could see the beach of San Francisco, and you could hear all the families and kids running around playing on the beach, and that was like the hardest. Knowing I was stuck in here, and I see all these people enjoying their freedom, that caused me more stress than anything they could have done to me here. That was the most painful. So Judaism is well aware of the mental stress. So therefore, not to get a person totally drunk or out of it, but one of the things they did was they used to give them, have a little drink and to dull the senses, maybe a little spices, that they should know, they'll know what's going on, but not to totally know where they're totally going crazy. So they used to give the person who was on his way to his death to have a little bit of wine in order that he should dull the senses. So we're saying, no, we're having a l'chaim. We're not going, hopefully, to the death penalty, but we're drinking it for the sake of living. And one more idea I brought down, the fifth and final one, at least for now, is that there's another medrash which says, what was the whole purpose of wine? The purpose of drinking wine was l'nachem es ha'avel, to comfort the mourner. You know, the whole purpose, because people mistake, people don't know, they ask, they want to know, are you allowed to drink wine? Can I bring wine to a house of a mourner? Are they allowed to drink wine? And the answer is yes. The time beforehand, what you called an onain. An onain is someone you lose one of your close relatives. So in between, after the death, before the burial, you have a status of an onain, which means you're totally exempt from all commandments. And also you're not supposed to have meat and wine. You're supposed to be preparing for the funeral. Once you go home, once after the burial, you have a din of an avel, and then you should, not that you have to, but the custom is to drink in the house because that was the whole purpose. Again, I guess it's part of you're under a lot of stress and you just lost your loved one. Not that it shouldn't be a house where you're getting drunk there. That's not the purpose of it. The purpose is to have a little drink to calm your nerves because you lost a parent, a spouse, brother, whoever you lost someone close. It's not the happiest of times, so so the whole purpose of wine is to comfort the mourner. So when you make a toast at a wedding or any other time, you say l'chaim, it should be, I'm not at a mourner's home, but l'chaim at a happy occasion, I'm at a time of a simcha. So different reasons why behind the l'chaim. Either, as we said, the hitting of the glasses, so just to make sure no poison, or the separation of the fish and meat. We said the wine that Adam and Eve drank from the tree from the Eitz Hadas, so we're drinking l'chaim. We said when a person's going on their way to capital punishment, being killed, they have a drink to dull the senses. We have it for life, and in contrast to Nachem Avel, to comfort the mourner, we do it l'chaim. So interesting. There's a concept when a person, a yortzai, and there's a very strong Hasidic concept that people have incorporated, that on the day of the yortzai, usually in shul, they make what they call a tikkun. They make a breakfast, some do honey, they have, so strictly speaking, actually if you look in Shulchan Aruch, if you look up in the code, it really says to fast on a yortzai. That because it's always it's not the best of times, you lost your loved one on this day, and they say you're supposed to spend the day remembering them. How do you remember them? You're hungry all day. Why am I not eating? Because I lost my whatever. So strictly speaking, in the Shulchan Aruch says to fast, but different customs developed, and therefore it's known as either fast or feast. Different customs, either people fast or feast. So what was the reason behind the Hasidic custom of eating? So they want to do it. Number one is you invite people in for breakfast. So number one, you're doing the mitzvah of Hachnasas Archim, you're doing the mitzvah of entertaining guests, that you're doing it in the honor of your parents or whoever it is, and you're getting them to make brachas, getting them to make blessings. So therefore, that's what they write in the Hasidic Sfarim, and therefore, that some have a custom, they fast, but they make a breakfast for everyone else, and therefore they have everyone else who wants to eat, so they get the best of both worlds. And interesting, they say that's how the custom. Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky, he's saying this not in a positive way. He's saying, where did this custom of eating at a yortzai come about? He says, because we know, what do we do on the era of Pesach, the day before Passover? If you're a firstborn, so you're supposed to fast. But what we do is most synagogues should make a siyum. You finish a certain amount of studying, and you're all happy, and you get to eat. So Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky says that's why on a yard site, so it's only a custom to fast. It's not a law. You don't have to. So the custom was the person finished a certain part of learning, and he made a siyum, and then they used to make the siyum, and then they ate. Today they dropped the siyum and just eat now. That's what the Litvish approach to eating. But obviously in the Hasidic world, and it's incorporated. Many have that custom today of eating on a yard site. But either way, that's the whole. But the whole purpose is whole l'chaim is that's what Judaism is all about. It's taking the mundane and making. We don't hold from. In general, we don't say this abstain from things. We don't do things in the excess and not to do them at all, but everything in moderation. As Maimonides tells us, the golden rule in his famous book in his introduction, he writes, the middle road is the golden rule, that all extremes are bad. And his example he gives is with the reed I might have mentioned a couple of weeks ago. You have a reed bent all the way to the left, and you want to get back to the middle. So if you just move it back to the middle, eventually it's going to go back to the left. You got to move it all the way to the right, of course not too much, you'll break it, and then eventually it'll come back to the middle. He says all extremes are bad, but if you have a sickness, if there's something wrong with you, then on occasion you will have to take an extreme. Not that extremes are good, but in your specific case, you have a sickness, like someone's taking antibiotic because they have an infection, and the antibiotic works and they feel much better. So someone's saying, I'm feeling great, I don't have any infection. Imagine how good I'll feel if I take this antibiotic. That's not the way it works. It adds to a deficiency. It's not going to get you better, maybe worse. You'll get immune to it. So the point being is, around right, all extremes are bad. The middle road, of course, as Rav Soloveitchik pointed out, doesn't mean you can't be more passionate about certain issues than others. In the big picture, overall, you're in the middle. It doesn't mean you can't have a strong opinion or be passionate about some things. And like the Gemara in Sukkah explained, there were different rabbis. There was one rabbi who fasted for a long time. He tried to prevent the destruction of the temple. Yeah, when it came to, let's say, the law of Sukkah, you're allowed to eat, let's say, chips and water outside the Sukkah. But he wasn't strict when it came to Sukkah. But the other rabbi who didn't fast when it came to trying to prevent the destruction, he was strict. So different people, you can be strict in different areas. But as long as overall you have balance, and that's why it's called it's interesting, by Sukkot, the Hadassah, the myrtles, kosher myrtles have to be like, they come in a circle of three. They have to be on the same level. If you don't have them three coming up in the same spot, the Talmud has a very strange language. Instead of just saying it's no good, it calls it a Hadash Shota. Like Shota is like a fool, not like full like a legal fool. Someone doesn't have any. You're in a mental institution. Now you're full. You don't have any day. You don't have any any balance. So therefore, a Chassid Shot. So he says by a Hadash Shota. Well, someone who's not balanced, it's called a Shot. That's why a child in halacha, let's say they can't give testimony on things because what do we see kids do all the time? I mean, obviously younger kids especially, but when they're happy, you give them a little toy, they don't have a worry in the world. 5 minutes later, something happens, they're crying. Basically, it's total focus on like right in front of them is either the happiest, because the child doesn't have a balance. You can't see perspective. Okay, I have a little of this, I have that. So that's what you need in like balanced perspective. And that's what the Rambam is saying. The middle path is you have to have a big picture and know, what the extremes are, and you have to live a normal, a normal type of life. And that's what, Bernard.
I'd like to come back to the L'chaim, because something that I would like to have your opinion on.
Sure.
We say a blessing when we drink liquor or when we drink wine, right?
Right.
Now,
but
we say the blessing only because of the occasion, or do we say it's a blessing because it's nice to drink wine? What I'm saying, what I'm not clear about, say we have an occasion as a Kiddush, no?
Right.
Or where it's actually prescribed that we should drink wine, but because there's a Pesach, and other occasion Purim, that's supposed to be. So let us say, is there a difference between that and say when we go to a cocktail reception? Do we also say a blessing then, or?
Do you mean just a regular? You go to a party at work. You mean? Yes, that's a good point. There's two different factors here. Well, see, l'chaim, the toast is one thing. In fact, interesting. Malki, we had in Parashas Lechuch, I think it was Malki Tzedek. He was punished for this. What happened was after the war, he went ahead, he thanked Abraham, and then he thanked God afterwards. And because of this, he was punished. He was taking his kahuna, his priesthood away. But from here, the rabbis learned a very important lesson that before you thank a human being for something, you have to thank God. That's why therefore, what one should do is, let's say, if you're making a toast, you should make your whatever blessing, whatever you're drinking, whether it's wine, boer priagafen, whether it's schnapps, shahako. You don't necessarily have to do it even publicly if you do it before, but the appropriate thing is to get up and say, first, we want to have gratitude to God that He brought, whatever you want to say, that we're here, we're healthy, and then you make a bracha, and then afterwards you give a toast that blessing you make all the time, whether there's a prohibition of getting benefit from this world without thanking God first. So therefore, anytime before you eat anything, you always have to make a blessing no matter where you are. That's independent of, and l'chaim that's a special kind of toast. You're giving an extra little prayer, kind of. The blessing is one thing, and you're giving like an extra toast, prayer, whatever you want to call it, afterwards. But that you don't have to. So regarding the blessing, you have to make all the time. You don't necessarily have to you don't have to do a l'chaim every time you drink wine.
No.
If it's an occasion where you feel you have to make a blessing before you drink the wine. And it's interesting, even if you're having bread at a meal, usually bread covers everything. But interesting, bread doesn't cover wine. So if you're having wine during the middle of the meal, you make your own bel priagafen. And the reason why on Shabbos and we don't have to is because we already did it beforehand. When we make kiddush, the bel priagafen covers all the wine. But that you'd have to make any time you get.
Covers all the wine for the day, or
no, just for that sitting, for that meal, assuming. But if you 2 hours, if you're having a 3-hour meal, then it still goes. But I'm saying if you got up later, we're hoping you're not drinking for 2. But let's say you ate a l'chaim at shul, and then you want to have another l'chaim at 4 o'clock, then you have to make a new bracha. But l'chaim is optional. Blessing is a rabbinic commandment that before we get any benefit from this world, whether it's any food, anything, and not just wine, we have to thank God for giving us the food. And then also we have blessing afterwards as well, grace after meals, berachas hamazon. The other religions, I think they have grace before meals. We do have blessings before. We have blessings before the meal, but the biblical blessing is after the meal. Why is that biblical blessing after the meal? Why not before the meal? Which one? I don't know. Which one makes more sense to you? Would you make a blessing? We do both. We cover ourselves, but which one would make more? If you're only going to do one, which one would make more sense to you? Grace before meals or grace after meals?
After.
Yeah, what?
Because it's easy to thank before, but you have to remember Hashem before, after you, just to thank Him after you've enjoyed the eating.
Yeah, we'll see. Actually, that's going to be our answer. That's when we do it. But is that what anyone else have any other logic why they say in either direction? Why do you think before or after? There's no right or wrong. I'm just asking what you think.
I think if you have to say the blessing, I don't know if it's according to the Bible somewhere or the Torah, when you eat and you are satisfied, then you say that.
Yeah, the verse is right. The verse is quoting, and we say v'achalta v'savata, and right. So that's why we do it afterwards, right? So the reason is because we make blessings before because we need permission to eat. But the question is, when's the danger area of forgetting God? If a person's waiting to get food, starving, etc., as they say, there's no such thing as an atheist in a foxhole. that everyone, but when the bombs are falling, everyone believes. In other words, when you need food, and let's say you went to every doctor in the world, they can't help you. Okay, now I'll do some tehillim or some. In other words, when you're in need, it's a normal human existence. We're going to turn to someone for help. God, other. But when's the danger of forgetting God? When you have everything, or when you think you have everything. When you're satisfied, v'achalta v'sabata. So the danger area is when you have your full belly. Then that's when the Torah man. Now you have to recognize. Because now you think, I don't need anyone's help. I'm full now. Now's the time. That's the danger area, and that's the biblical mandate, right? Very good. You want to say something, or?
Well, no. It's just that I wasn't clear in my own mind. Let us say you get an invitation to an art auction. Well, very often at these places,
wine and
they
cheese.
serve wine, and so on. Now, the purpose why they are serving wine, presumably, is to impair your judgment, probably. And now, am I supposed to then? Is that an occasion when I should say the bracha of a wine? If I'm going to drink it.
Yeah, bracha. Bracha is always
independent of the occasion.
Yeah, the l'chaim. Then I don't know if l'chaim. Maybe if you're selling the art and you want to, but then there's no need to make a l'chaim. But the blessing is always. The blessing is always appropriate.
Oh, always appropriate.
Yeah, because basically we assume everything belongs to God until you make the blessing. Basically, it's kind of like going into a candy store and stealing candy, eating without making up. The same. The same concept in terms of everything belongs to God. Whether you say it whether you use the language of the bracha or or in your other words, in your own words, but basically to recognize that everything belongs to God. And you appreciate. It's all part of the general. We're trying to ingrain it as gratitude, because you can't be happy without having gratitude.
You always have to say kiddush?
When? At an art auction?
Yeah, you wouldn't have to, right?
No, but you make a bar, just a bar priya gafen.
Yeah, okay.
Right.
Well, maybe you make your blessing after the food.
Yeah.
Because your belly is full and you didn't choke on it.
No, right. That's
because
that's
you have an awful lot of people here that are choking.
That's why, and interesting, that's why we daven mincha on Yom Kippur, Erev Yom Kippur, before we eat the meal. The concern is you might get, the bone might get, you might choke, and might have a chance to repent, so we repent before the meal, Erev Yom Kippur and that. But in general, it's not something, we always have, you always have to be careful, especially if you have kids and with grapes and that. I guess we could turn to page 58. The Talmud Bavli, Tractate Sanhedrin 70a. Any volunteers? Or else you have to be voluntold. That's the next step. I prefer volunteers, but if not, I'll have to appoint someone.
I'll read it. And Noach awoke from his wine and knew that his younger son...
Right, so the story was as he said, he planted the vineyard and he drank, and then obviously they got drunk and he fell asleep. Yeah, okay, go on.
And Noach awoke from his wine and knew what his younger son had done unto him. Rav and Shmuel differ, one maintaining that he castrated him, whilst the other says that he sodomized him. He who maintains that he castrated him reasons that, since he spoiled his plans for a fourth son, Noah cursed his fourth son. But he who says that he sodomized him throws an analogy from the word, and he saw occurring in two different places. Here it is written, and Ham, the father of Canaan, saw the nakedness of his father, and it is written in Bereshis 34:2, Shechem, the son of Hamor, saw her, took her, lay with her, and violated her. Now on the view that he emasculated him, it is right that he cursed him by his fourth son. But on the view that he sodomized him, why did he curse his fourth son? He should have cursed Ham himself. Both indignities, both indignities were perpetuated.
Right, so basically it's saying in opinions that both will happen. In fact, but why four sons? Read the next one, the next page. God, who wants to read why God wanted Noah to have 4 sons?
God wanted Noah to have 4 sons so that each could inherit one of the 4 directions of the world. Come and said, I will castrate my father so that he will not have the 4th son, which we will have to share the world. Noah said to him, because you took away my chances for having the 4th son, I swear that I will only curse your 4th son. And so the verse says, he said, cursed be Canaan.
Right, right. So,
what does this mean? I swear that I will only curse your 4 sons. Not only, but lonely. What does that mean?
It's probably just a typing error.
Is it?
I don't know. I don't have the book.
I swear I will only me, only you. Only, I'm right.
I swear I will only curse your 4th son. What does that mean?
Yeah, maybe.
I will alone only curse your 4th.
Alone. Yeah, I don't know if that's. I don't know if he's.
Could be like alone. I will alone.
Yeah,
it's just a different way.
It's the same thing. Yeah, I don't know if he's quoting. Maybe he's just quoting the biblical, or maybe it's a typing mistake. It's the same thing. He's only cursing your son, not the other. That's all he's saying. Like alone. Like I don't know why he used that language either. Maybe it's biblical language. Who knows? I swear that I will only curse. He means I will only curse your 4th son.
Yeah, but what does lonely curse?
No, same thing. No different. No, so.
Never heard of it before.
Yeah, I didn't either. But that's either it's a mistake or that's what it means. Right. So we see that he's supposed to have 4 sons, and we see from here also that we learn out that we know there are 7 mitzvahs b'nei Noach. There are 7 universal laws that the Gentiles have to keep. So is honoring parents one of the 7 Noach laws?
Yes.
No, it's not.
Yes, it is.
Well, it depends, yes and no. The simple pshat, he's right. The question is it in the 7? Let's name the 7, and we'll find out. Anyone know the 7?
Well, the 5 are the same, the last 5.
Well,
Thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not
The
steal.
7th cutting meat from a living animal.
Yeah, it's one. Yeah, the way I remember it is like this: the 3 things a Jew's supposed to give up his life for: not to murder, not to commit adultery,
not to take
Idolatry.
and idolatry. That's 3. And then Aleph, Beis, Gimel, Daled. Aleph stands for Aver Min Achai, not to rip off a limb off a live animal. Beis is a euphemism. It says Birkas Hashem, blessing God, but it means the opposite, cursing God.
Right.
Gimel, Gezel, stealing, kidnapping.
Right.
And Dalet is Dinim, setting up a court system. How comprehensive, that's a discussion. Those are the 7. So I didn't see honoring one's parents in there. Yet we see that because what he did to Noach, he didn't honor his parent properly. Worse, not only didn't he honor him, he debased him. We see he was punished, and his son. So why, if it's not one of the 7 mitzvahs b'nei Noach, why should he be responsible?
That's not the way I was taught.
Yeah, go on.
The way I was taught was that if you go out of your way not to curse God, right, is one of the 7 commandments of man. You go out of your way not to curse God, and God is represented in the Torah and the 10 Commandments as being a parent figure.
Yes, you're giving an answer. Okay, that's
right. So that's the way I learned it. So although it doesn't say thou shalt honor thy mother and thy father, you're doing so because technically God.
That's what I'm saying. I'm agreeing with both of you. He's right. It's not in there if you look. But you're right because we're going to find it that we are going to include it.
Right.
Because we see not only through here, but we see many examples in Sefer Bereshis where Gentiles are punished for not honoring their parents, and also same thing with charity. It says Sodom and Amorah were destroyed because they didn't treat people properly. They didn't take care of the poor. So one approach is it is in there. It's included in that. As we said, we have 3 creators: Mommy, Daddy, and God. And therefore, not to curse God is not to curse my Creator. So it's included in that one. What else? Another opinion is it's included in setting up a system of law because the most common sense law is honoring your parents. That if you don't, how do you judge a society? They know how to treat the elderly, they know how to treat the parents. Of course, you always have a couple of wackos that treat everyone else properly except their parents, but I'm talking about normal people. Most people, if they treat their parents well and they treat elders, it'll be a good society. So it's included under the general rubric of dinim. And then you have a third approach is the 7 laws are the minimum. Those are they have to, but the 7 laws and plus any common sense law. Anything you don't need a Torah to tell me. Anything you could figure out with your brains with common sense. But of course, as Mark Twain likes to say, unfortunately, common sense ain't so common. But if you can figure it out with common sense, it's logical, then a non-Jew is obligated as well. So for instance, there's an interesting Gemara. It says there was this non-Jew, actually it was a Gentile boy, and someone came along and they needed to get something from him, but it was under his father's pillow, and he didn't want to. And he would have made him with $1 million. I'm making up a number. He would have got a lot of money, but he refused to wake up his father. He said, I'll lose out on the deal. Let me point out, it was his money. His father would have killed him if it was losing his father's deal. But either way, it says he didn't wake him up, and then God made it up to him. He found something, a red heifer, and he made more money. But the point being, so the Talmud has an interesting expression. It says, look how far does a Jewish person have to go to honor the parents? This Dama ben Nesina, who was not Jewish and not obligated in honoring his parents, yet look how far he went. How much more so we have to do that we are obligated. I always use that. I always paraphrase that phrase in the Gemara when I talk about my own kibbud avei, my own honoring of parents. I say, I'm willing to go see my parents in the Catskills in the summer, and I'm willing to go in the winter to Florida to see my parents. That's how much I'm willing to do. I don't know too many people like that. But moving on, so the Gemara says, but the question is, in this Gemara it says that a non-Jew doesn't have to keep kibbud avei. I thought we just said a non-Jew does. So only the logical things, not to curse your parents, not to hit them, not to do this. But I'd say it's opposite of logic. Not to wake up your father and to lose $1 million. Logic would say, wake up your father. It might be the moral thing. It's definitely not the logical thing to do. So on that. So we're obligated on both areas, but that's what they point out. So we assume a non-Jew, even though it's not in the 7 mitzvahs b'nei Noach, but we assume it is either it's included in a euphemism for cursing God, your creators, or under the general rubric of keeping the laws of society, or the 7 is the minimum, but any other common sense law that we could figure out on our own, they're also obligated in doing. You were saying something or not?
No. That was my point.
Yeah, no, right. Then,
but you're not supposed to tear the limb off an animal, but you can do it to you.
You're not supposed to what?
Because it's specific, right? Specific, it says don't tear a limb off an animal, but it doesn't say don't tear a limb off a person.
Oh, right.
So that's accepted, especially if they deserve it.
But that's Sar B'Alei That's a different thing. I guess we can't go through all of them, but we'll do a couple of more sources, and then you could, I guess, you could read the rest later. But let's turn to 65. Rav Shimshon Rafal Hirsch. Who wants to read that on page 65? Let me warn you, it's a long one. We're looking for a new volunteer.
You want me to do it? Pass over the book, I'll do it. Unless, Bernard, did you want to do it?
No.
All right, the whole world of humanity is built on the relation of children to their parents. As long as children see in their parents the depository of God's mission, do not regard the bodily material, but the spiritual being in them, out of whose hands they receive their spiritual being, for so long mankind flourishes like a tree. But if, on the other hand, this factor is quite absent from the minds of the children, if there is a possibility that a child can find pleasure in that part of its parent's nature that it is sexual, if reverence of the child for its parents is absent, then the stem is cut through which out of the past should make the future spring forth ever nobler. So that when Israel had been led to the border of the land, whose inhabitants were to be cleared out for Israel to build up a pure mode of life, degeneration and its result were shown to them, and they were told, "See, this degeneration had its beginning in the first disrespect with which the ancestors of the nations behaved towards his father." It is deeply affecting that Noah pronounced the curse for Ham in his child, and this expresses the monumentous warning. He who does not wish to be punished in his children must honor his own parents. If Ham does not want to be punished in the future of Canaan, let him not sin against Noah. The sin which children commit against their parents punishes itself by the way of their children, by the way their children will treat them. And just as in private families, this law applies to the development of whole generations of mankind. Only where the younger generation stands with respect on the grave of the bygone one, draws a cloak over its lapses, but takes to itself all that it had of nobility, truth, and greatness, as a valuable inheritance on which to build further its own life. Is the development of generation a tree that progressively develops in new blossoms? But as soon as the younger generation gloats over the nakedness of the fathers, and because of their human frailties mocks at their great spiritual traditions, as soon as the future jeeringly tears asunder the bond with the past, their own future is also a dream. And just as they jeer at the memories of their forefathers, so will their grandchildren jeer at them. Ham is always the father of Canaan. Inasmuch as it is repeated against the next verse that Canaan will have the fate of being an Eved, a slave, then must undoubtedly be some connection between the Canaan character and the Eved fate. Freedom is only achieved and retained by those who can master and control themselves. Sensuality is uncontrolled. Lasciviousness is the bait by which one is led by strings into slavery. He who at times is master of himself, who can easily control giving satisfaction to the urges of his senses, he cannot be bribed or enticed. For him, gold cannot become gold chains. He can go under, die, but he cannot become enslaved. Thus for man, thus for nations. That was a hard read. Did you get it? That was a hard read.
Yeah.
But there was, you know what's interesting there?
Incestuous thing.
What's interesting there, it says, he who does not wish to punish his children must honor his own parents. Right? It goes on that he expresses the monumentous warning about children. My parents always used to say that you're going to get, someday your kids are going to treat you as good as you treat us. Very interesting.
Yeah. Well,
Is this supposed to be an incestuous?
No,
what
I
is
think
this supposed to be?
I think because they turned their heads, right, to cover them.
no, that was a different. Right.
That's what they were talking about.
That's a different opinion. What one of the sons did to Noah when he was drunk? Did they just castrate him or
sodomize them?
That's what we read. That was.
Well, that's an incestuous act.
Yeah.
Yes.
So is that
Well,
what we're
beyond
talking
that.
about here? What is this supposed to be about?
Yeah, that's why I know. That's why it was a terrible thing. That's why he was punished so severely.